This is the Tamron 11-20 2.8 version 3 for the Canon RF lens mount. This is a focal length that I really love for weddings, and it's something that I think more people should be trying, especially on gimbal. So let's check it out. Welcome back to Wedding Film School. We are the wedding filmmaking education channel that tries to do everything from showing you behind the scenes of amazing weddings to talking about gear and even maybe a little bit of tips, tricks, kind of some business stuff too. But today we're talking about the Tamron 11-22mm 2.8 for the Canon RF mount. Honestly, for some of you guys, this lens is going to be like a godsend and a new best friend, and it's really actually perfect for weddings. So let's talk about why. So let's start with the basics. This is an ultra-wide zoom lens, but on an APS-C sensor. So like I said, it's 11-20, but it really equates out to like a 17-32 millimeter, maybe 16-35 kind of equivalent lens. And it's really perfect for weddings because one of the standout features of this is just that it's so lightweight and so small, and it's kind of a dream come true for putting on a gimbal, especially for those of you that like to travel light. Whether you're doing like those sweeping shots of the reception, you're following that bride down the aisle, this lens works really well in a range of scenarios like that. And I think they did a great job just considering how it's going to be used. Tamron has kind of totally revamped the lens in a lot of ways. They have two new aspherical elements, one XLD or extra low dispersion, and two LD low dispersion elements to minimize aberrations. This means it's going to be sharper, it's going to have better color rendition, and less fringing. And this is all very crucial for your image, and it makes a big difference when companies are doing new stuff, especially lens manufacturers. One of the things we can often lose is that they're improving the optics, and Tamron improved the optics on the version 3 over the version 2. It looks great. The optical performance is really, I think, where the lens actually shines. It's got a constant 2.8 aperture across the zoom range, which is awesome. So you've got a lot of flexibility when you're shooting low light, which is pretty invaluable during those dimly lit ceremonies or even receptions. The sharpness from the center to the edge is very impressive, even when you're shooting wide open. It's a really great looking lens. One other thing to point out about this lens that you can see on the body is it does have this USB-C input, and that is for Tamron's app, which allows you to make some minor adjustments to how the lens works. And in our experience is a pretty cool feature, if not something that's maybe a little inconvenient to use, because honestly, who wants to be plugging a lens into a USB port? But it is cool that they have it in case there's something you might want to customize about the lens.
It's Android only, so I can't use it.
This lens has, I think, a lot of the same inherent weaknesses of a lot of ultra-wide angle lens. This isn't anything to get overly worked up on, but I figured we might as well go over them. First off, there's no built-in image stabilization, which, you know, it's a bit of a bummer because I actually really think Tamron has some very solid stabilization. Maybe Tamron just figured it's not necessary and they'd rather have a little bit of a lighter lens, and I really can't blame them for that. The only thing I'll say about the build quality and the lightness is I don't typically gravitate towards light lenses as maybe just a big benefit, even though I use plenty of them, just because they tend to be kind of plastic, and this lens is no exception. It is, I think, on the plasticier side. That being said, I've used a lot of lenses like this. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to fall apart or whatever, but it is just a thing to keep in mind. This lens would not handle severe weather, I think, very well, but it should be totally fine for wedding filmmaking. One thing to keep in mind is that it doesn't have an internal zoom, so it is going to get bigger and smaller, which I think has a slightly more effect on a gimbal, so you might need a little bit of rebalancing, but in my experience, it wasn't too bad. As I mentioned before, wide-angle lenses just have some inherent issues that go along with them being super wide angle. At the wide end of this lens, you can expect a little bit of barrel distortion, which you might, if you're doing photos, you might want to correct in post. It's not very severe. We can see it here, but it's there. So keep it in mind when you're framing your shots. Now, while the autofocus is very solid, pretty fast and very quiet, so it works really well for video, I do think the focus ring is kind of squirrely. I'm not a big fan of focus by wires. I don't think any filmmaker is. But that could just be more of a personal preference than a flaw, and you can do a lot of adjustments to maybe improve the focus curve, whether it be using the USB port on the side and using Tamron's app to maybe adjust how the focus curve goes, or maybe some cameras do it. It's probably also not a big deal because in a lot of ways, most people using this lens are probably gonna be flying it on a gimbal most of the time anyway, and they're not gonna be touching the focus rings. So not a big deal, but just a thing to keep in mind, it is a focus by wires lens. So to wrap up, the Tamron to 11 to 22 millimeter 2.8 for Canon RF is a very compelling choice for wedding filmmakers looking for an ultra-wide lens that doesn't weigh down their kit. It's very affordable. It's got great optical quality. Of course, it's compatible with gimbals, which is a big deal for us in wedding films, and improves over previous iterations. So it's a very strong contender as the choice you're gonna pull out of your camera bag. And the same goes for the various other mounts for this focal length. If you're looking at the E mount for Sony, or this Canon RF or whatever else they make, I think you're gonna be pretty happy with this lens choice, especially if you're on an APS-C sensor. I think lenses like this and cheaper cameras like this are kind of a secret weapon to get very, very, very beautiful imagery at a very affordable price. So I like it. It's a great lens. We brought it to our retreat, Clarity, in New York City, and shot B-roll with it for the entire couple days. We are very happy with the lens. If you found this review helpful, give us a like, subscribe for more wedding filmmaking tips. Let us know in the comments if you're using this lens or what your favorite wide-angle lens is for your camera. And until next time, keep shooting those beautiful weddings. Remember, the best moments are worth capturing, guys. Keep doing it. See you in the next video.